Welcome back. It's another episode of the Better Learning Podcast. We are talking about the movie The Incredibles today, and I'm joined with Mercedes Ramirez Johnson. Mercedes, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. Thanks for having me.
And also Katie Riley.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
So you both know each other, right?
We do.
Yes, our kids went to school together, and so when this opportunity came up, and maybe I could have a co-guest with me, she was the very first person that I thought of. And I also want to apologize. I lost my voice, and so I've been overdosing on cough drops and hot tea all day. So my apologies if this is not soothing to listen to, but I'll do my best.
What's your cough drop brand of preference that you have going right now?
Um, I bought Vicks because when I was little, Vicks Vapor Rub was like magic voodoo cures for any Hispanic family. It's called Vaporu. I didn't even know it was pronounced Vapor Rub until like I was in high school or college or whatever. So I bought the Vicks kind, and so I actually have a voice, so I think it worked its magic.
Good. We need to hear you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right. So you both have unique experiences. Do you want to just give a little bit of your background? I think it will help frame as we have the discussion about the movie of what perspective you're coming from that. Mercedes, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I met you guys through speaking at one of the A4LE conferences in Galveston last year, and that was a lot of fun. And then I've been asked to come back to speak at the international conference in October, and so that's how I came across on your radar. And so I do professional development programs for client companies. I do resilience leadership programs and also a lot of workplace safety programs for clients. So it's great to be here.
Yeah. And how about you, Katie?
So I've been in education now 22 years. Primarily, my background has always been in working with kids who learn differently. I was an autism specialist by training. I worked in Chicago public schools and then went into Dallas public schools, where ironically they hired me to be a parent in-home trainer, which I didn't have any children at the time. So I always thought that was a funny job. And I apologize to all the families that I gave advice to when I didn't know what I was talking about. And then I went through and started to be head of school and dean of local private schools and parish schools in Dallas. And currently, this is the first year I am not working full time. I am doing consulting, and primarily I work to make sure that kids find the right school and the right environment to be successful.
Very cool. So that helps give perspective of because we do this fun format and around movies, but it's always cool because we're still hitting a lot of the topics that are important around education and having those perspectives because our audience members are just ones that are really passionate change makers in education. Like Mercedes mentioned, we are affiliated with the Association for Learning Environments, A4LE, and also EdMarket, as well as Education Leaders Organization. So we're always just trying to combine these circles that really have the same mission, but they may hang out and go to different conferences, and they may be looking at the more the learning environment from one, and the other looking at how they actually drive change within school culture. So, but the movie Incredibles, what give me like because Mercedes, I think you picked this movie when you first or said, "Hey, do you want to pick a movie?" Why did you pick The Incredibles?
Well, I was going down the list, and there was a lot of fantastic movies on there, which we're supposed to have like a snowstorm in Dallas over the next 48 hours. So I might just treat myself to a couple more of those movies that are on the list. But when I saw that there was an animated movie category, when I saw The Incredibles, I was like, oh, no question, it has to be The Incredibles. I mean, the movie came out in 2004 when my sons were born, but I remember buying the DVD because when you have twins, it's sometimes, bad parenting 101. Sometimes you just got to throw a DVD in there so you can actually cook dinner or take a shower or whatnot. So I watched that movie a million times with my boys, and it just brings back great memories. And I remember the very first time I watched it, I was looking it through the eyes of an adult, of a parent, and I thought, this movie actually has a lot of great lessons, in weaved through the plot line and the story. So that's why I picked it, and I'm glad that you guys agreed. And Katie was like, "Sure," So I'm looking forward to giving it our review for the day.
Katie, is there any personal connection to this movie for you?
I mean, I do remember watching it when my children were young, and like Mercedes, I used it as a babysitter to possibly shower or do laundry. But what I loved about watching it this time is I watched it with a whole different view. I watched it as a teacher, as an educator, kind of looking into more of the characters than I had before, and I really enjoyed it.
Nice. So mine were, this was a movie to me that I knew of and I saw parts of, but I had never seen it all the way through. Like what you guys are describing of where your kids were, mine was the movie Cars.
Hmm.
That was the
Oh,
one like yeah, like our oldest had watched that like a million times and I knew like every line to that movie. So this was the
good
first
chow.
I know. And
Ciao.
with Tow Mater and it was like so being able to watch this was like with a really fresh perspective of not seeing it before but knowing a little bit about it. Like I think I'd been on the
Uh,
Disney ride. They rebranded one of the roller coasters in Disneyland for The
ah,
Incredibles. So it was yeah, it was fun going through that. But for anyone who has not seen this movie, it was a 2004 Disney animated movie. Craig T. Nelson plays the main role as Mr. Incredible, and he marries another superhero who is played by Holly Hunter, and that's Elastigirl. And I didn't quite understand the premise, where they basically just decided that these superheroes were
Should get
causing too
married.
many were causing too many lawsuits. Is that what it was?
right. They were a liability because, if a
Uh-huh.
building's if they have to go get a bad guy, the building might fall down or something. And so people were down with the supers.
So they basically just got sent into witness protection
Protection.
program and we're told to not show your superpowers.
Right, right. Keep it under wraps.
To be normal, they said. You just have to
Be
be normal
normal.
and blend.
Yes. Yeah. That's where I started getting a lot of the lessons because that, and then they end up having three kids, and the kids also have superpowers in there. So, what did anything else that just overall before we go into the award categories of like takeaways or things like themes of the movie that you want to make sure we talk about?
I mean, I
I
think
love the
something that,
importance of family. Yeah,
yeah,
the importance of family was, it really showed that it took all of them to accomplish a goal.
I think on top of that, the kids were embarrassed that they were told for their whole little lives that they had to hide their powers, and the kids at their heart just wanted to be normal. Like they were jealous of their little brother who was a baby still in diapers because they thought that he didn't have powers. And so they were jealous that, well, he doesn't have to hide anything to blend in because he's actually normal. And I think a lot of kids may sometimes feel like, gosh, I wish I was just like everybody else. I wish I was normal. I wish I didn't stick out. So that really hit me pretty good, that whole theme of just like, I just want to be like everybody else.
Those were the things too. The one of the notes I put in here is what around the lawsuits forced the superheroes to go to normal lives. My first correlation into education, I'm like, kind of feels a little bit how our education system is for teachers. It's all these lawsuits and all these new layers of regulation and things. It almost like stifles the superpowers of the teachers. That was the first one that I was going through the notes. I'm like, all right, maybe maybe there's something there of trying to hide and trying to like, yeah, make sure that the true self is not coming out.
Right, because sometimes common sense cannot prevail because you have to follow these rules to prevent parents from getting upset or from the administration having a talk with you and things. And so, I mean, I think that's totally true to life.
Yeah, education's changed in that matter. There's so many things that we don't even try to get involved with because we know it's not going to end no matter how many superpowers we have. There's just situations that the education, the learning stops because we have to focus on trying to appease all the rules.
Yeah. And then the other one, and I so someone who spends my career in learning environments, one of my things is, and it drives my wife nuts, but anytime they show anything in a school, it drives me nuts that they are always showing like the traditional
Mhm.
school classroom where it's like straight rows, all, like all lined up looking at the front of the teacher. And in that security camera scene where
Oh yeah,
Dash was putting attack on the teacher's chair,
chair.
it was exactly that. It was
So
like the one scene that they show within a school is just that.
and I wrote a whole thing on that. I said maybe the teacher needs to have some training on less traditional classrooms. I thought maybe he needed flexible seating and allowing Dash to move around. I had a whole thing on that because I agreed. They wondered why he was having trouble focusing and learning, but he was probably because he was forced to sit for so long.
Yeah, yeah. All right, I had one more line before I go into that, which it may actually work its way into one of the categories. But one of the lines that really stood out to me was Dash's mom says to him, he goes, "Everyone is special, Dash." And then Dash's reply back, he goes, "Which is another way of saying no one is."
Mhm.
I'm like,
That's just so true to life though, because you hear people complaining of, everybody gets a trophy, everybody gets a ribbon, and that's that same mentality is that if everyone is special, then no one is special. And everybody does have superpowers within them, and it's up to us as parents, as educators, as administrators to finding what those superpowers and those strengths are, whether it be pre-K all the way through higher ed. But yeah, we see that a lot, just in conversations with friends and family or in, the news and things, is that when you make everybody feel like they're all a winner. Yes, they're all a winner in their own way, but we just can't water things down just for everybody's sake.
the other one too that kind of is the main storyline is that there is Buddy, who was this like kid at the beginning of the movie just wanting to be like the sidekick and help Mr.
His number
Incredible.
one fan. He was his
Number
number
one,
one
number
fan.
Yeah.
one, number one fan. And Mr. Incredible just kind of pushed him aside and I mean, you can look at it from the adult perspective. I'm like, it's what he should have done, right? Like, you
Right.
can't really let this kid like get involved in like, a major event that's going on. But it was almost this turn of like he felt like he was disrespected as a kid. In a lot of ways, you can say like he was bullied or something like
Yeah.
that, and then he comes back and he
Well,
is
if
now
Mr.
the bully.
Incredible was so incredible, he should have found a way to help him engage in a positive way with that.
Yeah.
See what
Right.
happened?
Uh-huh.
Like
So
have like a junior academy for
Yeah.
superhero wannabes. And
uh,
that was Buddy's thing, is that he wasn't a super. He didn't have powers of his own. So that's why he made it into his life mission to kind of put the supers in their place and create his own powers through AI and weapons and things that he created to go head to head, toe to toe with the actual supers. But just think of how many kids out there who feel like they've been bullied or have been ignored or aren't appreciated, to where that hurt, that pain turns into a trauma that they kind of go the rest of their life overcompensating
Hmm.
for. So it's
It
actually
became his
pretty sad.
identity. It became his
Hmm.
identity, who he thought
yeah,
he was.
yeah, yeah. All right. So the first category we always talk about is usually in these movies, there is like a teacher that really stands out as the one. We call it the John Keating Award because the first one that we did in this format was Dead Poet Society. So it was Robin Williams' character in there. But if you were going to say who was the best teacher, who was the best mentor character in this movie, do you have an answer for
Yeah, well, for me, I think that Edna, the fashion designer who designs all the superhero suits, I think she's the true one of the biggest heroes of this movie, because when Helen, Elastigirl, was thinking that her husband was having an affair, she goes to Edna to find out about why he has a new suit and where is he and do you know anything? And she basically just breaks down like, "Oh no, what am I gonna do?" And we left each other, and what's gonna happen? And she got like a newspaper and just started hitting her over the head, and she was like, "You know what to do. You need to remind him he's Mr. Incredible. And you need to remind yourself that you're Elastigirl." Kind of like snap out of it, woman, and then she was kind of like, "Oh yeah, I am a super, and I don't need to be sitting here crying about it." And I think she's like one of the biggest heroes of this whole movie because she kind of reminded her like, don't forget who you are.
Mhm.
And that's kind of how the whole rescue mission came along of her being able to go to the private evil lair island to rescue Mr. Incredible.
So I spun it a little different. I felt like the female characters were the standout in this movie. And what I did is I thought to myself who they would be in a school and what roles they would play. And I chose Edna as well as the retired principal who comes back and kind of guides us all, and kind of leads us when we are frustrated and falling. Every school has one. Every school has my Dr. Hines, who's there for 25 years and comes back and you're still on your best behavior, even though she's been retired for 5 years. But just that person that can see the world a little differently. And she shook Elastigirl out of her funk, as well as I thought Elastigirl represented kind of that teacher who wasn't burnt out yet. That teacher that was still like positive and would go into every setting, followed all the rules though. She followed all the rules, but she tried to keep everyone happy and positive and cheery, even when she herself was probably pretty miserable having to pretend to be who she was. And then Violet was the last female character because I felt like she was the student council president. She was the one who maybe wasn't always thought of as the coolest girl, but she started to grow throughout the movie and she was always kind to others. So the women characters in this movie for a superhero movie were pretty strong.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I actually had Edna in a later category, but hearing your explanations, I would agree. Edna, I think, is the one that was probably the best mentor here that really, yeah, was able to look at someone and be able to get the most out of them or try to have them see
Well, I
something in
think we all
themselves.
need that person who's going to point out the ugly truths for us, not the yes men who are like, "Oh yeah, yeah, that's a great idea," but someone who's going to kind of like get us grounded again to realize, like, put things in perspective. And sometimes those people aren't the most warm and fuzzy, but they
Mhm.
get the job done, and their intention behind it is for your own good. So I think we all need an Edna in our life for sure.
Yeah. Yep. All right. The next one is the clicks. Typically, in a movie that has schools, they do have some type of stereotypes in there and groups that are naturally emerging in there. What are the ones in this category that stood out for you?
Well, I said the good guys versus the bad guys, the superheroes versus the villains. But I also started to think back to how Buddy was wanting to be in the good guy group. Like he wanted to be a good guy and be part of Mr. Incredible's world. And he ended up turning villain and turning bad. So I thought, click wise, if we engage with students when they have a bad situation or make a bad choice, or, we let them know that they could still stay in the good guy, like we could still guide you that way, maybe you wouldn't have to have the bad versus the good. And that's very common with superhero movies, right? Like there's always a villain, but in this one, I think he started out with good intentions.
He just wanted to help any way that he could. So no, I think that's true. That's true. One of the cliques, I don't know if it's a clique at school, but we all know that man or that woman in our neighborhood or someone that we
Mhm.
work with who peaked in high school And that's all they talk about is the one big game,
That
the
game.
state
Yeah.
championship.
They have the
Like, and that's,
trophies still up in their
yeah,
room like he
right,
had. Yep.
right. Yeah. So I think that's how Mr. Incredible was, is that he was so missing the glory days. That's why he would go out with Frozone to listen to the police scanners to see if they could go and save someone. And they were both lying to their wives, but they just wanted to get that, you know, that fix to go and do something because they really weren't supposed to. They weren't allowed. So they just wanted to relive those glory days.
Yeah. I totally agree with those. I kind of thought the super were like they were like the cool kids,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
like they were the popular kids that, got a lot of attention. And yeah, and you can see sometimes don't treat others as well. Yeah, and then relive those days after they're
Right.
out of
Right.
school. The other one that I thought was interesting in there, and I feel like it happens a lot, and I would say this actually in the education market, it hit a little too close to home for me a little bit of how anything on the corporate side of things is always viewed as evil. Yeah, and coming as a business owner that serves the education market, um, yeah, I hope I hope the people that are in the education market are breaking that stereotype of saying like it's all about shareholders and profits and things like this, because my experience is, yeah, that there is a little bit of that, but the vast majority of companies that are in the education market are in it for the right reasons,
Right.
and they genuinely like care about it.
Sure.
But definitely in cartoons and kid movies, it's always like the evil, like
Yeah.
business corporate
Right.
one. I'll just leave the silence there for a little bit.
Okay. Well, I was thinking, I don't know anyone in education who's a billionaire. So I'm like, I don't, the education market that I feel might be looked frowned upon is the testing, right? Like the
Correct.
standardized testing, the data, that type of thing. But other other than that, we're real grateful for any
I know.
innovative things that come our way
Yeah,
because it could
I would say
truly
there's
help.
still a little bit on like the textbook curriculum side of things like that but yeah, I mean it is, yeah, and then there's story like I don't know if you heard the Sold a Story podcast series where they went through like the reading curriculum, and it was very good like exposure of like, hey, we are not teaching kids the right way to read. But they added this element to it where it was like now talking about like they were only doing it for profit, and be like, I don't think that's the case. I
Oh,
really think
yeah.
they were
They had a good idea, they thought. Like that
yes,
that's
yes, yeah. But I would say like my experience, now working in the education market for 15 years, there is an undertone that comes from the educators of that if somebody's in here, they're just trying to sell you something, and they're not, and they don't care. And I hope that never comes from me or anyone on my team. And I feel like from our industry, I've had really good experiences of people just genuinely wanting to help and yeah, figure out how we can be better support, because we know the real work happens within the
Right.
school
Yeah,
and the
that's just
educators.
sad because you're offering the tools and the resources to make their jobs easier so they can really reach their students and stuff. But that's just sad that us versus them mentality would permeate the process
Yeah,
because in
yeah,
the end, it's all about the students.
yeah, yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
Kevin, don't take that too personally because there's lots of unhappy people in education. And no matter if you were bringing them gold, they would still find something
Yeah,
wrong.
yeah, yeah, and yeah. Don't get me wrong; it doesn't have like two, but it is one of those things. I'm like, if we could change that perception and recognize that, like the vendors that are supporting the education market, they're on your team. They are not against you; they're on your team, and I would say the vast majority of experience is that way. But there's still, yeah, there's been enough where it's just the initial doubt, like you have to overcome that. You have to
Right,
like
right.
prove them wrong, but which fine. I like that challenge of of doing that. Anything else on the clicks category?
Another thing that I thought was a click. Was Violet because she was so quiet and shy and she would make herself completely disappear when
Right.
the cool kids would look at her and things. And that reminded me when my sons are twins, so they both went to college at the same time. One of them was going through Rush to join a fraternity, and he called me that first night after the Rush events where they go and they tour all the different fraternity houses. And he was like quivering in his voice. He was like, nobody talked to me, like, everybody was ignoring me, this, that, and the other. And I remember telling him, because Katie, Ben, he's Mr. Loudmouth,
He's not
and
a quiet kid.
I don't know where he gets it from, but I told him, I'm like, if you set yourself aside like you're an other, you're going to be treated like an other. Get up in there, introduce yourself, tell them who you are, like give them a reason to talk to you. If you're just going to stand there in the corner and wait for someone to come to you, then that's probably not going to happen. And that just, with Violet being all quiet and hiding herself from the cool kids, it was like she was making herself an other. And so, of course, they're not going to pay attention to her because she's not making herself available and approachable. So, I don't know if that's necessarily a click, but that's definitely something that goes on, I think, in schools.
I mean, the confidence factor, right? Like she
Yeah.
didn't have confidence in herself, and she was told her whole life to hide something that made her stand out. And even in social situations with middle school students or high school students or even college, they don't always want to stand out, but they don't exactly know how to fit in. So it's kind of this maturity, confidence, like it's okay if people don't like you, you don't want to be their friends anyway. Like find the people that appreciate your powers, your superheroes, your the things that you're not good at too. Like the best friends you can ever have are the ones that understand that you might not be good at everything and they can laugh with you, right? So to me, Violet needed the confidence before she could cross over into not caring what people thought of her.
Have you ever wondered how a simple change in your classroom can revolutionize learning? At K-12, we believe the physical space is key. When we partnered with Gary Community Schools in Indiana, something incredible happened. Their classrooms were outdated and uninspiring. Using our radically student-centered approach, we reimagined their spaces. The transformation was nothing short of amazing. Teachers saw immediate results, students came back from winter break excited, more engaged, collaboration increased, and overall performance improved. One student even shared, "We have new furniture, it's like Christmas all over again." On the first day back, local media came in to cover the story, capturing the joy and excitement of students discovering their new learning environments. See how we can transform your school today. Visit kay-twelve.com to learn more about our innovative approach. K-12, because every student deserves an inspiring place to learn. Visit kay-twelve.com today.
All right. So the class clown category. So this doesn't always humor, like the way we define it is it's just somebody who steals the show. They may not be have like a major role, but they do get a lot of attention in there. I'll start this one out. This was the one where I was pulling Edna in there because
Oh, okay.
she really, if you look at it, she was only in the movie for, I don't know, maybe like 5, 10 minutes at most. But just like a very like yeah, just a memorable character, had a big influence. So to me that was the one that popped in my head. What did you have?
Well, for me, I said that Baby Jack Jack
Oh
was the come from behind, steal the show sort of character because everybody assumed he didn't have any powers because he's just a little baby in diapers, doesn't even know what's going on. He can't even talk, but he ends up saving the entire family when the bad guy comes back to kidnap him and go ahead and destroy the world. Baby Jack Jack just like totally like transforms
no.
into, I mean, I guess I'll call it a demon. I don't know. Like he was basically like a ball of flame and with horns and all these things. And he just went ham on Buddy. So if it weren't for Baby Jack Jack, summoning these powers that nobody and probably even himself didn't know that he had, they wouldn't have been able to save the day. So I just love that he was so underestimated, like, oh, baby Jack Jack doesn't have any powers. And then he ends up saving the whole family and the world in the process. So he's definitely my steal the show
Oh, that's a good one.
character.
That was a good. As you're
So
talking, I'm like, oh, maybe the babysitter. Because I thought the
that's who
baby.
I was
Oh,
Oh,
gonna
sorry,
say.
I stole your
You
thunder,
stole
Katie. All
mine.
right,
You
go,
just
Katie.
stole it. The babysitter scene with Jack Jack, I could not stop laughing because she was such a typical teenage babysitter who had taken all the classes and gotten all the badges, but she didn't know she was trying to babysit a superhero. So it was just she stole the show for me with how Jack Jack was interacting while she was too busy talking about herself.
Yeah. Yep. Oh, yeah. All right. Sorry, I stole your thunder. But those
oh,
voicemails after too, I'm just like,
the
hold on.
escalation of the voicemails is what really makes it.
Yeah. And then I think the last one was like, oh, never mind. Everything's fine.
Never mind, all good. We should be impressed. You know what? She didn't have a cell phone. She didn't text. We should be impressed. She was actually
That's
talking into a
true.
phone and leaving a voicemail.
Well, there
That's
you
true.
go. Very
Yeah.
1990s. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. 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 It makes me want to actually, I'm going to skip ahead now. That's a perfect one. I'm going to go to the iPhone effect category. Um, so movie made in 2004, iPhone comes out in 2007, technology and really all the social media and everything comes, years following after that. How would this movie be different if it was made today with technology?
I actually had to look up when the iPhone came out because I couldn't remember life without an iPhone, which is sad. But I feel like it would have changed a lot. I mean, you look at the scene at the dinner table where the brother and sister start fighting, Violet and Dash, they would be staring at a phone if they were even sitting at the dinner table. So also I think it would be hard to keep your superhero powers under wrap for children these days because everything they do is filmed or videoed or, you
Yes.
know, it it's changed the culture in which families live, including superhero families. Oh, and she would have tracked him.
I know.
She
Yes.
would have
The
tracked
Find
Mr.
My
Incredible.
iPhone,
Mhm.
yes.
Right,
Or
right.
Life 360, yes.
Once she started suspecting something fishy was going on, that would have been shut down immediately. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah,
I'm
like
not
Katie
judging.
was
I track my own children. It's fine.
well, I mean, it's part of being a parent. You got to know where your kids are. That way, when you need to jump in and be a superhero, you know you can pinpoint their GPS location and jump into action if need be. So, no, absolutely,
What's
yeah. But
funny
I
about
don't think they
those?
could have had those secret
No.
identities
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
with facial recognition and old newspaper articles and things. There's no way they could have been just normal people, not knowing who
Yeah.
they
You,
were. Or, yeah.
you just think of that opening scene, in the city, everyone would have their phones out recording
Oh yeah.
everything in there. And yeah. Yeah. And if they moved to another city, they would
Mhm.
definitely be recognized
Oh,
for
for
sure.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So like that tracking too, I thought of that too because at one point there was a tracker in Mr. Incredible's suit, right? That's how they knew he was on that island. I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
you
that's
would
how
you
they
would
found him.
totally know.
Like, even though the other stuff was kind of behind the technology, that octopus looking robot on the villain island, that was basically AI because it would learn how to fight the superheroes by fighting
Yeah,
them and then
it
it
learned.
yeah,
They
yeah.
actually use the term artificial intelligence in there. And I'm like,
Right.
wow,
Yeah, like
that
that
was
was way
impressive.
ahead of their time. Yeah, I was
So
impressed.
forward thinking.
Well,
Yeah,
actually,
that
if you
was
watch
impressive.
any like science fiction movies or cartoons like the Jetsons and stuff, FaceTime was invented by the wife of the Jetsons, which she would put the mask on. If she looked horrible, she'd put the mask on to be able to communicate. Like all these things, they were invented by really smart people, but I think the people in Hollywood had come up with the ideas way long before
Yeah.
they became a reality where you can buy it at Best Buy now. So
Yeah. I remember when like the Apple Watch came out, they had a really good commercial that showed like all the old like TV shows and movies where they showed
They would
how
talk
yeah,
like
they would do
Knight
that.
Rider, Kit, get my
Yes.
car. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Johnny Quest, yeah,
Yeah.
all those, yeah, it's true.
Yeah. So yeah, that so the tracking too, that was one that stood out to me. Well, one, they had cameras in, if I go back to that scene in the classroom, they had cameras in the classroom.
Mhm.
Like, whoa, that's kind of now
That was kind
everyone.
of ahead of its time too, because I don't think, I mean, I
No.
don't know, I'm not an education expert, but I don't know very many public schools that would just randomly have cameras in the rooms like
Usually
that.
not in the
So
class. I mean, have
Not in
you
the
seen them in the
classrooms.
classrooms?
No.
They're in the
But
hallways and but
but we can, I hate it for our students, but we can pinpoint any type of behavior that happens in a bathroom or a classroom or because we have cameras in every hallway and every outdoor area. And no matter how many times you tell students you're being filmed, everything you do is being filmed. Sometimes they forget. And then the best is when they don't want to admit to something, but you just show them. And then they're like, oh, yeah. In the classroom is probably frowned upon, but so many schools allow cell phones on students that we do not allow cell phones in our classrooms, but I've seen where students can tape or videotape or
yep.
comments, so it's hard.
Yeah. Yep. It definitely is. All right. I'm gonna go back to our order here. So there's a category we called the homecoming scene, which is basically just like that iconic scene of the movie. I mean, there was a lot of fighting scenes and, definitely like at the end. But was that for you, or did you guys have different ones that stood out for you?
for mine, I have two homecoming scenes that relate to Elastigirl, Helen. The first one was when their plane got shot down and she's with her two older kids, and she turns into a parachute so they land in the water, and Dash is like, we're dead, we survived, but we're dead, and they're both of the kids are totally panicking, and she's calming them down so they can get their head straight. And then when they get on the island, they're in the cave trying to come up with a game plan of how to save dad, and she has this heart to heart conversation with them, saying, these guards that are on this island, if they have the opportunity to kill you, they will kill you. So you need to use your powers. And Dash is like, but you've always said we're not allowed to use our powers. And she was like, you need to use your powers. And both of the kids were like, it was kind of like she turned into Edna, like slapping them in the face with the newspaper, like, this is your time. So time to jump into action. And for the kids, it was kind of like an epiphany, like, holy crap, like we may die. And so now we can actually use our powers. Like that gave me goosebumps where she was like, they will kill you if they get a chance. So use your powers. That was like my favorite homecoming-esque
Yeah, that's
scene.
great. Katie, how about you?
So I went a little different. I kept going back to the tack in the teacher's chair and putting it in my head how this would be in school now. And I started to even take it a step farther and think, wow, would Dash have ADD or ADHD? Does he need an individual plan or a behavior plan? Do we need to maybe sit and think about this? Because right now, I think he's been called to the principal office multiple times, and it was a very traditional principal who was trying to talk the teacher off the ledge, and the teacher's solution was to put a camera in the room where you and I were like, what if you had different seating? What if you didn't make him sit there that long? So I was kind of thinking how it would be if these superhero kids literally came into a school. We would probably have to have plans on how to teach them differently because they could disappear or they could run away faster than us. So I thought as a homecoming scene to me was, how would we make their education better for them with the things that they had?
Yeah, the one that I came back to, it was really like that final like fight scene a little bit, like where they realized that the remote could control
Yeah.
the robot, I guess was a robot in
Yeah,
There's
there.
something.
But it was like that time where like, all right, everything in the movie kind of came together and clicked, and of Mr. Incredible throwing the football to his son Dash, like they were doing that, but then it required the coordination, the teamwork of someone to aim it while the other person hit the button. So yeah, I didn't have a very deep one on there. It was more just the climax of the movie of were they
but
gonna
it was still
survive or not.
symbolic because the good stuff wouldn't have happened if that coordination of talent wouldn't have been put into place. So
Yeah, yeah. All right. Was there a one liner? Was there like a certain line that stood out to you that either made you laugh?
Well,
uh,
I had a bunch, but the one that stood out to me the most was when Violet said, "I feel different. Is different okay?" And she said that to the
he
boy. She finally talked to the boy. And I thought
that's
she
so
finally got
sweet.
it. Different is
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
Right, right. And she was so afraid and shy of him, and then when he was trying to ask her out, she had to help him, like, "You wanna go to the movies? I can buy the popcorn." Like, he was, like, just as dumbfounded and shy as she was, I think kids a lot of times just assume, "Oh, I'm the awkward one," or "I'm the one who's a little weird," and we're all weird, and
Mhm.
that just kinda proved it right there when he got all tongue-tied and he couldn't even ask her out. So, yeah, that's sweet.
I always tell my students everyone is working on something, everyone. So whether it's academics or social emotional or even how to tie your shoe, everyone in this school, all 856 of you are working on, and the teachers are working on something. And so I kind of liked that even superheroes are working on things too.
I like that. I like
yeah.
that.
Any
Um,
other?
There was one we haven't talked a lot about Frozone, and he was
Yeah,
really funny. He was really, really funny. And this was so on point with at least some private schools that I've worked at. Frozone says to Mr. Incredible, "I can't believe you won't come to your own child's graduation." And Mr. Incredible said, "It's not a graduation, it's fifth grade. Everybody goes to sixth grade." And to me, I mean, Mercedes, you are well aware of the world we work in, and we make eighth grade graduation to me is even bigger at my school than my college graduation. I mean, it is kind of spun out a little bit of we want to keep them in the faith. We want to keep them come back to church. We want, after COVID, so much was taken away. So it's hard now to like take things away that we put in place because then there's like that one kid whose brother got that. And so I felt like that was so on point, Frozone, to, and Mr. Incredible are having this conversation like, what a bad dad you are. You're not coming to fifth grade graduation.
yeah.
right,
And he says,
right.
everybody goes to sixth.
Yeah, yep.
Like, it's no
I
big
had that in
deal.
there too. It's not a graduation. They just move on to the next year. Yeah,
Well, I liked it when Frozone's wife was having words with him because he was going to leave to go do something, and he's like, "I gotta leave. It's for the greater good." And she's like, "Your dinner with me is for the greater good." Like she was
yeah.
trying to put him in place and everything. But
I
something
liked
that
how they
I
named her Honey. Her name's Honey.
her name is actually Honey.
Her name is Honey. I looked it up, Honey, and
I like
Frozone. I thought that was kind of clever.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Plus, it's probably the only movie that Samuel L. Jackson has been in where he talked the cleanest lines ever.
Yes,
So
yes.
when I first was listening to it, I'm like, wait a minute, I know that voice. And once I looked
Yeah,
it up, I was like, oh, Samuel
yep,
L.
there it
Jackson, of
is.
course.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. I feel like when we went through the class clown, like like that was supposed to be his role. He was supposed to be
Yeah.
that funny sidekick. So
Right.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah.
it was good. I'm gonna skip ahead here for the sake of time, but I'm really curious to hear your answers of where are they now? And I know there have been sequels to this movie that I have not seen. Have you seen sequels? All right.
I
Nope.
think I
There's a
saw the
third
second
coming out.
one, but I think like in most sequel fashion, I don't think it was as good as the first
Yeah.
one. But
So
that's just my own personal
if we're gonna
bias.
go fast forward, 21 years here to 2025, where do you think the main characters are? What do you think they're doing now?
Well, I think Helen and Elastigirl and Mr. Incredible are happily married, and they still use their powers when needed. because when he started moonlighting, doing the superpowers, he became a way more affectionate husband, a way more involved, very much more intentional dad. So I think shedding the cloak of who they are and being able to actually relish their powers made them overall happier, which is just like us. Like if we can actually truly be ourselves and use our strengths, then that should in turn make us happier. I think Dash became an Olympic runner, and he's all over social media, and he has his own shoe line. um I said that Violet went off to college and then joined the CIA because she can become
Oh,
invisible, so
yeah.
she would be like a fantastic spy. Oh, and I put that baby Jack as a loose cannon, and he was headlining at Coachella, but that they go months without hearing from him because he's like total rock and roll,
That's awesome.
crazy, fun, crazy guy. So
That is awesome.
So I spun it to a school. I put Dash became a coach. He's the track and field coach. I felt like they had such a good experience after people started to understand how they learned differently that they wanted to get back into education. I had Violet as a teacher who did a lot of teaching evaluations because she could go in and out of classrooms without anyone seeing her.
Mhm.
And so she used her superpower to kind of help, because when you do evaluations, it's never really how it really is because they're all nervous and, it's never quite to what they probably are capable of. But I thought Violet could give us a great perspective on that. And then I had Jack as the principal
Oh.
after Coachella, because if we don't have any good principal, we're running out of administrators. And I thought he could definitely shape it up.
there you go.
I
There you
love
go.
that. I love that. Yeah,
And thanks for staying on task and on point, Katie, with keeping it to
that's right.
focus on education.
Well,
Yeah,
principal can go to Coachella. Like he
Yeah.
could still be a musician.
those are great. Yeah, I just kept picturing Mr. Incredible and like them as grandparents. Like what's that next generation of
Oh,
superpowers and being, yeah, and giving them just a lot of attention.
yeah. Right, right.
And then
Talking about the
frustrating
good old days and
exactly, and then frustrating the parents because the parents are are- yeah, are trying to do their parenting style while the
right.
grandparents are just like, oh, whatever, I'm just gonna go spoil them. So
Me too.
yeah, yeah, awesome. Any I know we skipped some of these other ones, but anything that you really want to make sure that
Yeah,
you wanted to talk about?
I have a complaint. I do not like that they named the villain Syndrome. I was thinking to myself because it
Mm.
put a negative connotation on
Oh.
it. And it really, I don't think in today that would be his name. I think people somewhere, but some of the greatest kids I've ever taught have a diagnosed syndrome. So all of a sudden I was like, who came up with that? Like even like tried to backtrack and figure out why Syndrome would be a villain name. Any ideas?
Well, maybe because he was killing off all the superheroes, so he was like the deadly syndrome that was getting rid of all the supers, which
Oh,
doesn't make
that's
it
a
any
good
more
spin.
appropriate or anything, because he turned into this maniacal person. But yeah, I hadn't thought about that.
That is
Huh.
interesting. I thought it was a weird name, but I didn't think deeper than that. And yeah, that's a great point, Katie.
Well, that I hope Pixar here's my point, but I
Yes,
doubt
that's
that his
right.
name's
Yeah,
Syndrome.
we're taking it straight to the Pixar section.
Awesome. Well, thanks for going through that. I guess real life, what's going on in your world? What's the latest? Anything that yeah, that you want to share with the audience?
Well, I'm just looking forward to seeing everybody in October for the international conference. This has been a lot of fun doing, and looking forward for people to connecting with me on social media so I can get to know them before October even rolls around.
Yeah, that'll be in Phoenix. That'll be fun. That's gonna be a lot of
Yeah,
fun. So,
definitely. October 29th.
yeah. How about you, Katie?
I'm just chugging along, trying to make sure that students have what they need to learn in the right environments. I have 86 eighth graders in Dallas that are applying to high schools for ninth grade. So this is a stressful time, and I try to remind them all that I have a 100% track record. All the students I have taught go to high school. It might not be the high school of their choice, but sometimes, that might be where they need to learn. So it's just kind of a stressful time. At the same time, I'm grateful for companies like you that keep trying to be innovative and think outside the box, because we've got to keep doing something, because education's really tricky these days. It's really
Yeah.
hard.
So Katie, in Texas, and so the environment is it open enrollment? I always talk about the differences around the country.
Sure.
So what is
So
what is that?
currently, I'm at a parish school, so a Catholic school, and so we end in eighth grade, and that's traditional, the model. And so all of the Catholic schools in Dallas have eighth grades, and then they apply to, there's 4 or 5 different high schools. And then you also have magnet schools, which are public, that you can apply to. You have boarding schools. I have students that have gone all over the country. I have students that go to public school. It's just kind of trying to take where a child is in eighth grade and figure out where they'll be most successful. And it is kind of a gift in a way, because usually you move into a public school. I went to public school, but you just kind of track along in the path that is put in front of you. But when you have to reevaluate a student in eighth grade, you can kind of look at how their brain works and their interests. And if it is magnet, if it's STEM, if it's science, if it's foreign languages, if it's dance, we have an amazing dance academy in Dallas called Booker T. I guess it's art school. And you can kind of actually give the student a voice in this process. I mean, a small voice, because some of these schools cost a lot of money and they can't afford them, or they have to have their parents on board. But it's definitely kind of the model that is more traditional in Dallas. And now with vouchers, it's kind of booming. I mean, it's kind of booming through the roof. It's going to be insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and
And
just to put it into perspective, when these kids are in eighth grade in a parochial school wanting to move on to whatever their high school of their dreams are, these kids have to take an entrance exam so they can see academically which school's the best fit. They have to do interviews.
Mhm.
So a lot of these kids go to tutoring to score well on the entrance exam. They take tours. I mean, it's more involved than my process to go to college.
College.
So
Yeah.
it's very anxiety producing for the parents, for the kids.
The
It's very
parents are actually
scary.
interviewed. The high schools are interviewing now the parents, primarily to make sure they're on the same mission of the school. But parents have to write essays. It is harder for me to think of this process for 14-year-olds than I would think the process is for college, because college, there's so many more choices. And they really haven't made any more high schools in Dallas or Fort Worth. I mean, you could go to boarding, and the boarding schools are definitely offering academic scholarships, but sometimes you're not ready to go away at 14. So there is a lot that goes into this process. But once again, they all go to high school, every single one of them. And if they're not happy in that high school, then we can just restart the process and try again.
yeah, that's really interesting. I talk a lot about that on the show, on just looking at other states' models so you can learn and see. And yeah, Arizona and Texas have some, like some that are more choice, more driven, where there are a lot of different options. And it does feel like some of those, because yeah, we talked about before we recorded, I grew up Chicago area public schools. It never even like occurred to me or anyone else that you go somewhere else. And now, I see my kids growing up in Arizona, and it's like there's a lot of movement, and they know kids at like all the different schools, and there are a lot more decisions like this that are happening earlier on.
And
And
college isn't the right fit for all of them. And unfortunately, you can honestly make more money going into a trade for some
right.
things. So not that we know that in eighth grade, but it's opening the conversation around what makes you happy. What are you interested in? What are the gifts that you have, your talents? So it
Yeah.
does make you think.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that, there's the pros and the cons, but you start also looking at like what I think most people are saying, the direction of having more of a student-centered approach, of being able
Mhm.
to to allow that track instead of it being more the industrial age of like everyone's doing the same thing. This is part of that systemic change of saying we are going to try to really make sure we're tailoring education for each individual student. So it's one of those where we are in, like, to me, I keep telling people, I'm like, the amount of change that is happening in the education system is happening right now and very fast. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of people who have not been involved in school, since they were a student would be surprised how much
Sure.
things have changed and are changing very quickly.
Yeah, it's scary, but I'm optimistic that
Yeah.
someone will figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, to the audience, thank you for listening to this. I hope you like this new format where, like where we are making it around the movies, and betterlearningpodcast.com is the hub. So if you want to participate, if you have a movie suggestion, if you want to nominate someone else to do it, that's where we get all of our suggestions, and we do review those in our planning meetings, and try to figure out which are the ones that align best for our audience. But we appreciate you subscribing, sharing, talking about it. Mercedes, Katie, great meeting you, and thanks for doing this.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. I
All right.
enjoyed every minute of it. It was so fun.
The Better Learning Podcast is produced by Matt Rogers and edited by Kelly Jones. The views and opinions shared on this podcast are those of the individual speaking and do not necessarily represent the perspectives of their affiliated companies, organizations, or associations.